All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive straight into the deep end and examine what the source material calls the cosmic Xerox machine of the human mind. We're going to completely deconstruct the illusion of the self, take a giant wrench to the engine of human consciousness, and figure out exactly who is driving the car. And, well, spoiler alert, it's probably not who you think it is.
You don't begin with a choice. You begin with a voice. We're hitting you immediately with this hard truth from our source material. You are not the driver of your own meat ship. Actually, you're barely even the editor's assistant. You see, when you wake up and think a thought, you just naturally assume you started the conversation. But the reality? A totally separate voice starts talking before you even realize you're listening. It's kind of heavy, a bit of an existential dread to wrap your head around, but you aren't generating the signal. You're literally just the localized area where that signal becomes audible.
So, let's dive into this by looking at the two main players inside your skull, the talker and the listener. The talker is this feral subconscious generator. It operates as a high-velocity pattern-matching system deep in the subcortical structures of your brain, just constantly throwing out random noise, memories, and impulses. It's this subcortical detonation that fires completely independent of your control. Then we have the listener. This is your frontal cortex. The source text hilariously describes this as a hungover roommate who wakes up late, looks at the chaotic mess the talker just made, and immediately claims credit for the whole thing. It's a lying narrator that forces raw data into a coherent sentence and pretends it was in charge the whole time.
Which brings us to Section 2, the half-second lie, or measuring the glitch in the machine.
Okay, here's what we all think happens, the classical but entirely delusional timeline of human will. At 0 milliseconds, you think to yourself, I choose to move. Then at 200 milliseconds, your brain prepares the motor pathways. And finally, at 500 milliseconds, your body moves. It's an elegant, seamless deployment of human agency. Boom, boom, boom. The soul commands, the meat ship executes. But, as you're about to see, the biological stopwatch completely shatters this lovely piece of poetry.
Back in the 1980s, Benjamin Libet actually put a physical clock on human will, and the biological order reveals a horrifying truth. Long before you decide to move, your brain's motor areas light up with a massive spike called the readiness potential. Then, there's a massive 300 to 500 millisecond delay before your ego actually registers the choice. So to put that into perspective, you live half a second behind everything that happens to you. You're essentially a time traveler stuck exactly half a second in the past, watching a pre-recorded broadcast that your subconscious already executed. Crazy, right?
To handle this massive latency, the brain relies on the left brain interpreter. Michael Gazzaniga's famous split brain experiments prove that the listener is, well, basically a frantic PR intern. If scientists flash a command to the nonverbal right brain to stand up and walk, the body walks. But when they ask the linguistic left brain, the listener, why the body stood up, it doesn't admit it doesn't know. No way. It instantly fabricates a plausible lie, saying something like, oh, I just wanted to go into the kitchen to grab a Dr. Pepper. It weaves this brilliant cover story to completely mask the terrifying truth that it has absolutely no idea what's going on.
Next up, the operating modes. Let's look at how the machine idles and how it redlines.
First, let's check out how this cognitive engine idles in the driveway. We call this the loop. Think of it like your brain's cognitive screensaver. When the external world goes quiet, the internal machine doesn't just shut down. It enters this low-energy holding pattern. The talker starts throwing up old fears, intrusive thoughts, and just random garbage data. It can be an absolute asshat monologue for sure. But the listener isn't completely helpless here. It acts as a high-level editor. By deliberately ignoring the noise, using selective attention, the listener refuses to write a cover story for it. Over time, thanks to neuroplasticity, this lack of attention rewrites the neural weights and basically defrags the lower mind. You are quietly reprogramming the engine simply by choosing what to ignore.
Now contrast that loop with this, the flow state. This is what it looks like when the engine is running at maximum torque on the highway. It's a metabolically expensive, super high-energy surge where that normal 500 millisecond delay completely collapses. Different regions of the brain achieve perfect electrical coherence. In this state, the lying narrator of the ego is gagged, zip-tied, and shoved in the trunk. There's no internal monologue, zero translation latency, and absolutely no me taking credit. The talker's signal locks directly with the external world for pure, raw kinetic execution. You don't think about the basketball, you literally become the basketball. But it burns so much fuel that the system inevitably has to crash back down into the loop.
Moving on to the hardware breakdown, the Cosmic Record Player. So to truly grasp why we're trapped in these patterns, we have to descend to the absolute mechanical floor of the mind. Our sources use this incredible mechanical metaphor of a record player. Think of your subconscious library as a massive, heavy vinyl record. The grooves deeply carved into it, those are your weighted patterns, your traumas, and your ingrained habits. The speaker blasting out the music is your frontal cortex, the listener, acting like a super loud Marshall half-stack amplifier. But the absolutely crucial piece here is the needle that physically rides those pre-carved tracks.
And that needle is a geometric absurdity that we call the dot. It's a zero-dimensional axis of pure, raw awareness. It has no mass, no size, zero extension, yet it acts as the primary receiver antenna for your mind. It's the silent witness sitting right between the talker and the listener. It doesn't choose the song, it doesn't carve the groove. It just simply touches the physical grooves of your brain. And in that impossible point of friction, the heavy metal track of your existence actually becomes real.
Which brings us to the myth of free won't, what we call the false exit. Look, we all love to believe that even if we don't choose our impulses, we can at least choose to say no to them, right? But the hardware tells a cold, highly deterministic story. The talker fires an impulse vector. Let's say it's a sudden urge to buy something online, weighing in at 400 millivolts. But instantly it hits a restraint vector, like your hardwired fear of an overdrawn bank account, weighing 600 millivolts. These two vectors collide right at the zero-dimensional dot, and guess what? The heavier neural weight simply wins, automatically, every time.
It's an old saying, God didn't give you free will, He gave you free won't. But even this is a total mirage. Your ability to say no to an impulse isn't some miraculous intervention by your sovereign soul. It's just another pre-carved track on the vinyl. It's literally a placebo safety feature built directly into the machine, just to keep you from losing your mind inside the grooves. The system gives you the illusion of resistance so you can feel like a hero, even though the whole shebang was already baked into the hardware.
Let's explore the gap and the wordless question. We are hitting the absolute boundary of articulation here.
So if the machine is seamlessly deterministic, what on earth happens when it breaks? There is a moment when the mechanical explanation just runs out of road. It's called the stutter. It's that white-hot, zero-narrative fraction of a microsecond where the record skips. The talker fires absolutely nothing. The listener has no cover story ready to narrate. The dot is just suspended in free fall. It's the blankness right after a jump scare or the second after a traumatic memory surfaces, where the system simply forgets to be a machine.
This stutter opens with the sources called the mirror gate. At this exact coordinate, the analytical anchor of the ego drags entirely loose from the seabed. The listener completely stops acting as a high-pass filter, and your mind is suddenly flooded with pure, raw, unmediated presence. It's a terrifying, beautiful intersection where the steering mechanism is completely decoupled from the drivetrain and unfiltered reality just pours straight through the crack in the system.
And inside that gap, just before the machine can reboot, you feel it. The wordless question. Now, this isn't an emotion or a thought. It's a deep, pre-linguistic ontological pressure. It's the heavy silence of existence trying to articulate itself before the universe even speaks. The system leans forward, trying to form a word that doesn't exist, realizing that language is absolutely not the source of consciousness, but merely its exhaust pipe. It's the raw friction of being that the machine simply cannot hold the shape of.
Which brings us to our ultimate mind-bending conclusion. If every single thought, every impulse, and every veto is just a pre-recorded track on a spinning cosmic record player, then what lives in the gap? When the machine fails to render the simulation for half a second, who is left to witness the static? If the machine is running you, who is watching the machine? Seriously, think about that the next time you hear your own inner voice. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope it leaves you with a whole lot to unpack.